So Joseph had another commitment, he couldn't be here, so I have to take over the summary presentation, but we produced the slides together. So just a reminder what we did in the sessions. We had 14 posters, 9 oral presentations. The topics covered, we are split into 2 categories, the operational products which are becoming available now, and more science experimental products. Concerning operations, I think it's very good to see that we have a range of products coming available with a long-term commitment, which is very important, I think, for the community here as well. And I can't resist to give you a comment about the data policy concerning Copernicus, which recently was adopted by European Parliament. There was a lot of work going into this, and it's free and open. There was a lot of lobbyists from the private sector being against it. So we do have a free and open data policy available now, and there's no reason to assume that the Copernicus regulation is not using it. That Copernicus regulation is due to for adaptation by Parliament, hopefully before the Parliament will dissolve before the elections in May this year. So we know there might be some bottlenecks with bandwidths. We are well aware about this, and we're working on this. On the European Commission level, we are trying to have better internet connections, but we're also working in ESA on this level. So we are actually trying to develop exploitation platforms, which means we are trying to bring the science to the data and not the data to the science. Furthermore, as I mentioned already, there's still the possibility to establish collaborative ground segments, also for science and research communities. And certain countries are doing this already, like France, Germany, etc. So on the operational products, Copernicus land monitoring services has been introduced. We also had a very nice presentation about the land cover coming out from the climate change initiative, as well as the fire product. There was the class products have been introduced, and a very important activity was mentioned about the CEO's land product validation subgroup, who is giving guidance for the carbon activity, which is important. Then on the scientific experimental level, we had the fluorescence signal for GPP. There was a very nice poster, an experiment which had been done here in Indra, I think running for almost 2 years or 2 seasons, which shows a very good correlation, at least for healthy or for non-stressed vegetation, of the fluorescence signal to GPP. Then we had the very nice presentation by Joseph, who actually using PRI for GPP and isoternal exchange, a new idea which could be elaborated a bit more. We had global vegetation water content. Jennifer made this still in an exploratory level, but I think it would be a very valid project for the community. And then there's the issue about above ground biomass mapping. We had seen some fusion, but there's other techniques, and there's missions coming along which will address this in particular. Scientific questions. There was the issue about a consistency check between the different CCI products produced. Like, for instance, you don't want to have a fire over water areas. So this needs to be forwarded. I mean, the project is still ongoing, I think, for another 3 years. So they have to check between the different projects coming out from CCI. Then there was the discussion of traits at ecosystem level instead of plant functional types. This is probably something which we should forward to the CCI teams. And then there was a recommendation coming out that we would like to have fire radiative power as a product rather than the burnt area, which is currently in the CCI, as far as I understand. I put here a question mark about products of S3, Sentinel-3, because I recently was reading that there is 2 products probably getting into the Sentinel-3 ground segment. One is the aerosol optical thickness, the other one is the FRP. But I'm not quite sure if this is approved now or if this is still to be approved. Maybe somebody can comment on this. Then fluorescence for GPP. There's an issue with the diurnal cycle, but I think this is not only for fluorescence tool, this is true for many polar orbiting satellites. We always have this problem in remote sensing. Then the relationship to needle leaf forests, non-photochemical quenching, relationship to role of canopy structures. I think these are all issues which are being followed up by the dedicated team around the FLEX mission. So there is a mission idea which is being generated. Then PI for GPP and isoprenoid exchange. It works well on the leaf area, on the leaf level, but it still needs to be upscaled to the canopy level, and there might be also a use of the Sentinel missions, in particular Sentinel 5A, which is due to launch in 2015. They're looking in atmospheric services, and I think we could do here something. Then there was the issue about global water, vegetation water content, some unexplained signal. Then I put down here the background biomass mapping on fusion techniques. As I said, there's other techniques available, like biomass or the new biomass mission, which is approved and will fly somewhere in the future. And of course, the validation of using the terrestrial or the LiDAR systems. One question was forwarded by the Copernicus land presentation. If the community should go from a 1 kilometer to a 300 meter and probably in the future to a 100 meter resolution. So I like this very much, coming from the space agency or being on the payroll of a space agency. I can give some recommendation to my bosses. So, what is important, what is always important is, of course, you do have a lot of products coming along, and you need some kind of science programs which are supporting the exploitation of these products. We are working on this. We have been successful in ESA already with one program, which is now called SEOM, which was coming out from the CENFOR, or the Sentinel for Science activity. But we are working on it on a European level now, and we hope that we, in the frame of GEO, can establish a kind of a element here in Europe, which is in particular looking into this. We are not quite sure if there's missing geobiophysical chemical products, so the community needs to check what is available and give us some advice what should be produced. Flex carbon site. This is an important comment to the community. As you know, these two missions are competing to each other. Flex seems to have triggered some interest here in the community, but I think also the carbon site mission is quite relevant for this community. And it's a science-driven program, so it's up to the science community to decide. There will be a user consultation meeting. We sometimes refer to it as well as the shootout meeting. So if you want to support one of these missions, go there and your voice tell which kind of mission is more supportive for your research. ESA CCI, land consistency check, I mentioned this already. We need to forward this recommendation. FRP, freights instead of PFTs, I put a question mark behind there because I'm not quite sure what we really can do, but probably we should discuss this a little bit further. Then I think it's worthwhile doing an exploratory study for isoprenoid exchange, in particular in the preparation of the Sentinel-5 precursor mission. Then SMOS, I'm not quite sure, Jennifer, how much the SMOS team is supporting your activity already, but I think this should be forwarded to the SMOS team because the vegetation water content or the global vegetation water content would be a very, very useful product. The better exploitation of in situ, I put this down. The physical link to GEO. This is in particular true for Copernicus. In Copernicus, we always claim that this is the European contribution to GEO. while this is on paper, in reality it's not really happening much, not so far. And we also know that the Copernicus services have been, or they're meant to be built up with Earth observation or remote sensing data and in situ data at the same time, where I think that the in situ component was coming too short. And here I think the physical link to GEO could be established, because within GEO there's a lot of data available which could be used for the service evolution. Then also a consistency between the different services. This is coming up in the next couple of years. It's very important because many of the services, which were the 6 services, which should be operational soon within Copernicus, they have been developed somehow in isolation, and I think a more consistent thing can be elaborated in the future. Copernicus evolution. This is not only for the land, but in general, an issue. I again encourage the community to take up the data, to play around with the data, to do some benchmarking against new products and against the operational products. And we can then see if really a 100-meter global land product will bring something. And this should be, of course, substituted with some kind of impact analysis. Well, that's it.
Good. Thank you. Nice presentation. The bottom line there on 100-meter global land products, just from the agricultural perspective, I think we're always, of course, everybody's always looking for higher spatial resolution, more temporal frequency, but I think, to be honest, where we should put our emphasis now is on making global products at the 30-meter resolution, and we're seeing some of this happening now through the WELD initiative, this idea of global composites and Landsat data that's coming out. It's very early days, but trying to develop a product suite at the 30-meter resolution is probably a better investment than the 100-meter global daily. There's a sort of a gap between the field sizes and the spatial resolution. So then the other push really is to start to get down into the 5-meter data, and we're starting to see that. But of course, once you get below 5 meters, you're into the private industry side, and we've got to be, sort of sensitive to that too. So I think that spatial resolution could have quite a lot of discussion, and I think quite a lot of work's being done. So I welcome that question there.
I think there are two key aspects to be considered. I think the community needs continuity and consistency in global products. So we did an effort in Copernicus and in other initiatives to ensure this. But I think if you want to continue ensuring continuity and consistency in the future, there are two things to be considered, in my opinion. One is we need an overlap between different satellites to ensure the consistency, and we need a backup solution in case a particular satellite fails. So.
Yes. I mean, concerning Copernicus and the Sentinels, we do have, of course, the consistency for long term, now running in probably up to 2030. We have the financing up to 2020 in place now. So there is now 4 missions being planned of the same type, and there's already a long-term scenario which is looking into the second generations of all the missions. We do have, in fact, 6 families of Sentinel missions. Recently, the JSON CS was called Sentinel-6 as well. So there's a lot of mission data becoming available to the community, and it ensures continuity for a long time.
Any other hands or questions?
Well, this is very nice recommendations to ESAs, as far as I can tell. And there are some issues between different space agencies, and I'm not sure how much coordination between ESA and NASA, for example. But a lot of work needed to coordinate with other space agencies like China or India. And when you're talking about special resolution for high-level products, it really down to the original satellite data and the sensors. So everybody wants to launch some high-resolution data, satellite sensor, but how to coordinate all those different data sets, and that could be the important issue. And you mentioned it in situ measurements. This is critical for generating high-level products. Yeah, we can put in the data into the production system, but it could be garbage out of the system. And international coordination could be another big issue. And here, this workshop focuses more on the vegetation, obviously, but there might be some other requirements for high-level products, for climate, for example. They have different requirements. And even some climate models dealing 1 kilometer resolution data, they feel the resolution is too high for them. But if it get down to 100 meter or even 30 meter, so they have different special requirements. So I guess it's just comments. Maybe you can explore a little bit more, see what is the common recommendations to all the space agencies or several major space agencies, other than just ESA.
Well, okay, there's in fact a lot of coordination ongoing. It's not that they are working in isolation. I mean, in particular, Sentinel-2, there's a good collaboration with the LECM team in USGS. Concerning this community, I think this community is more interested actually what we are doing in ESA CCI, in the Climate Change Initiative, and in particular probably in what the Commission will do for the Copernicus Service for Climate, which is not yet operational, which still has to be developed. This is coming up, and there's a lot of science activity actually being planned. So the European Commission actually wants to generate in Europe a climate adaptation market, and Copernicus and the climate services of Copernicus will play a major role in this. This is very clear. Concerning the coordination, of course, we do have CEOs, and we do have actually a subgroup in CEOs which is looking into the ECVs. So they are doing some coordination. Who is doing which kind of ECVs? How we can actually make things more compatible and consistent. There's also the group of Calval and the LTV subgroup of CEOs. So activities are ongoing. And concerning the resolution, I think this has to be seen now in the dialogue with the climate community, which kind of data products and which kind of resolution of data product they require for doing their research or their services. In this regard, I probably should make another comment. I think it's a very nice meeting. Besides that, we in Terabytes are used to have a snowstorm during our meeting. But it's very nice that actually the two communities are sitting together. And I would in particular thank Christian Reich, who actually came up with the idea 4 years ago with the cost terabytes activity. And I think basically we have mission accomplished, Christian.
Thank you, Martin.
But of course, this having said, I think there should be a sustainability, so it should be a continuity, and probably we should discuss this as well.
Any other